Hello, friends and colleagues. Welcome back to the Think Catalyst podcast. I'm Ricardo Ferraris, along here with my business partner, Vivek Uchibotla. We're a couple of advertising veterans who are now doing some consulting work with our firm. And obviously, this podcast is always interesting because we talk about a lot of the things that often are not spoken about. And we have a very interesting topic today to comment with you. And Vivek and I have some interesting thoughts about this. Vivek, how are you this morning? Hot off the press with some big news in the advertising business. Bring it
We we
on.
don't we don't we don't normally do podcast commenting on breaking news, but this news is big enough that it merits a special edition of our podcast. So we're going to talk all about the unspoken fallout of advertising mega mergers because there is one in the news this week, which is the IPG being swallowed by Omnicom merger.
Right.
Although the world is being told that it's a share swap, so it's a merger among equals, and everything is good.
There's never an equal when one of these things happen, to tell you the truth. And assuming everything gets approved by regulators, etc., the name IPG will disappear, and everything will go under the Omnicom umbrella. And likelihood also for a good part its leadership. But we'll talk about this. We have a number of points that we wanted to talk about, and especially as it relates to what does this mean to you, advertisers and clients, because it does ultimately affect how you are going to be serviced or what organization you're going to see in front of you when the buyout completes, right?
At this point in time, all you're hearing is talk of synergies, complementary skill sets and footprints, and it's all going to be great. You're going to hear about how the future is data and technology and creativity, and that this new mega holding company is going to be at the heart of it. And everyone in the industry is going to say nice things about this merger. In fact, I've heard competitors, I've heard publicists making some comments about it, and I've heard my WPP making some comments about it as well. But you know what? We've been to this rodeo before. This is not the first merger that we've witnessed or lived through.
Hmm.
And so we are going to provide some insight to our advertiser friends. And the message is, uh, forewarned is forearmed. Be aware of what's coming. Some things are going to be happening, and we're going to lay them out.
Most of these have not really turned out the way they were intended to turn out. I'm not saying, we're not saying that none of these mergers or acquisitions in the past have been unsuccessful, but there's a lot of issues that come around this when something like this happens. And in the announcement, it was said that there are $750 million worth of efficiencies that are going to be managed out of this acquisition, merger, call it what it is, of bringing two very large companies together that have had challenges in terms of growth. So when $750 million is announced, it invariably means a number of things. So let's start off with point number one, Vivek, and that is there's going to be a number of positions that are duplicated in the organization: finance directors, administration, human resources. I can go on. Probably most of the ones that are not client facing, that it's either one or the other. And so there's going to be a lot of layoffs happening in the organizations. And a number of the businesses will no longer have that back office because it's going to be incorporated into one main back office. So we're going to see a lot of layoffs. We're going to see, in fact, I'm already seeing that the number of AI generated CVs happening in the market this week has jumped significantly. So, a lot of people are going to be looking for work because they know that what's coming is going to be, a significant culling of positions.
As much as they would like you to believe that it's a friendly merger among equals, the truth is that one company is buying another, and that's where the law of combat will prevail. So the buyer will gut the buyee, basically. And a lot of the people in the acquired company are going to be under significant risk of losing their job.
Mhm.
And it's not going to be everyone in the acquired company because they're going to keep a couple just to be able to say that all of the layoffs and the right sizing and the downsizing was merit based. But the truth of the matter is that it's a law of combat, and there's a winner and there's a loser, and the winners are going to keep the plum jobs, and the losers are going to move on. That's just the way of the world. Anyone who believes otherwise is hopelessly naive.
We're going to go from big six to the big five. Um, but I would say, and let's go on to point number two, the other big four are going to be circling the wagons and they're going to be figuring out who is some great talent in these two companies that they'll want to pluck because probably some of the better talent will decide to leave and jump ship. And they'll do this for a number of reasons. And mostly because they may think that this combined operation will not leave for them a space for them to work and do what they really want to do and what they were hired to do to begin with. Thoughts on that, Vivek?
There's been an announcement that there's going to be $750 million in synergies. And that's a very broad statement, but when you bring it down to an individual level, when you're dealing with someone who has a career and a family and responsibilities, it's very difficult to say, well, those synergies are going to come from elsewhere. It's not going to affect me. I got to look out for myself. I got to look out for my career and my family. So I'm not going to take the risk if I have opportunities in the market, if I'm a well-respected professional and I have the opportunity to jump before they throw me off the ship, I will certainly jump.
Yeah.
It's just human nature. It's just normal. And again, we've seen this dynamic play out now several times over the last 20 years or even more. I mean, this whole dynamic of agencies being acquired by other agencies, we've seen this movie many times. So if I am a well-respected person in the market, I am certainly going to be receptive when those agencies that you mentioned come calling and say, hey, here's an opportunity, leave before you get thrown out.
The business is highly affected, and we'll go into point number three because as this plays out, and it will happen over the next couple of months, there's going to be a call it a paralysis by analysis. Management won't allow a number of important decisions to be made for the business because they are still in a flux period and figuring out what they're going to do and who takes responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a number of things that are going to be happening in the business that won't be decided on and acted on because there is this moment in which the acquisition is taking place and decisions have to be made, especially as to who's going to remain on the perch and who doesn't.
And any forward-looking decision is going to be put on hold. So investment's going to be put on hold. Promotions are going to be put on hold. And beyond promotions, I mean, as people leave the company, um, a lot of those jobs are going to be frozen. Replacements are not going to be hired, and so workloads are going to increase, and the the pressure, it's going to become a pressure cooker, um, with no end in sight.
Mm,
And we're saying that this whole thing is going to be consummated, but what was it, 8 years ago? Omnicom and Publicis were going to merge, and they talked about that for 6 months, and then it didn't happen afterwards. I mean, there's regulatory agencies, there's Wall Street, there's a bunch of entities that are going to be involved in this, and it's it's very uncertain.
mm.
And uncertainty just doesn't bring good things for the clients of these agencies.
Yeah. Well, it
It's
brings
going to be
paralysis,
massive paralysis.
massive paralysis. And that takes us to
Uh,
point four about really what is how it's going to impact the client business. We'll talk about some other things a little bit later, but this will mean that management will be focused on the acquisition, hitting their numbers, protecting jobs, figuring out who stays and who doesn't, and not necessarily on your business about how to make your business grow, right? So, what do you call it, Vivek?
what do I call it?
Musical chairs?
Corporate musical chairs. I like using that expression.
Corporate
No,
musical
but
chairs.
if there's been an ongoing criticism of the large agency groups, it's always been that I never get to see the senior people. You know, my business is run by the more junior people, and that's under normal circumstances. Now, those senior people that you never get to see are going to be even less visible because they're worrying about the business implications on their own agency,
Mm,
and they're not worrying about whatever challenges your business has to. So if you saw them not so much before, you're going to see them even less
mm.
now.
The vultures are coming.
The vultures are circling.
What happens
Blood
next,
is in the
Vivek?
water.
Right.
So if I am an agency that competes with Omnicom, or I am an agency that competes with IPG, every single one of the clients of Omnicom and IPG now has a huge bullseye on them.
Hmm.
And I am coming after them because I know there's trouble at Omnicom and IPG. There's difficult times coming. And I will be knocking on these clients' doors like never before.
Mm.
And I will be making extravagant promises to pry these businesses away from Omnicom because this is the golden opportunity. Not Omnicom so much, IPG more. This is the golden opportunity to get those businesses out of that holding company.
Actually, it's not positive on any end because agencies that are going to be wanting to get their business are going to be neglecting their current business, and agencies that are protecting their business will neglect their current businesses to protect their businesses. So I don't know. I mean, when so much time is devoted to new business and not managing your client's business, one has to ask the question, how is this benefiting me and how is this affecting me? Very difficult to manage. Very difficult to manage.
It'll certainly affect me as an advertiser. I can't
Mhm.
see the benefits of it, to be
Mhm.
honest. I
Yeah.
really can't.
And back to
So,
the earlier point, great talent will either leave or be plucked or, again, and this whole conundrum, there's a series of consequences that come from this, and again, affecting the business. But but hold it, you're going to be told differently. Everything is fine, right, Vivek?
no
What are,
pasa nada.
no pasa nada. Nothing
No
happened.
pasa nada.
You're going to be
Business
reassured.
as usual.
It's business as usual. Everything is great. It's going to be, what are the benefits to this? Well, you'll get more tech and more AI and more of some other things. Uh, Ask the questions. What is it really in it for me? I think that that's one of the big things that advertisers and clients should ask their agency. How does this benefit me? And really figure it out. So it's gonna be difficult, I think. I think that the big winners are shareholders. A number of executives from both companies are gonna have some very interesting payouts. Um, Other than that, we'll see.
It's the management of these companies is forced to speak with their clients and say, "Don't worry, nothing's changed. It'll just get better." But it's really hard to do that with a straight face, having experienced and lived through many, many mergers previously over the last 10, 15, 20 years, where it's never gotten better. It's just gotten worse. It's just gotten more chaotic. So,
Mhm.
a lot of these people are putting their credibility at stake when they're going up to their clients and saying, "Don't worry, be happy. Nothing's going to happen."
Yeah.
But they got to do it. I feel sorry for them. Uh, but their credibility is not being helped by what they're telling their clients, even though they can't tell them anything else. They can't tell them something different. Hard position to be in.
Both of these corporations have similar clients, Vivek. So, and that goes to the next to the last point that we're going to have here, and that is, what do we call it? What do you want to call this
Conflict,
one?
chaos.
Okay, there you go.
Conflict, chaos.
Yeah.
So, IPG is a company that's had a long-standing relationship with General Motors. And Omnicom has had a long-standing relationship with, well, you were there. You tell me what car companies are at Omnicom. There's several of them, right?
Yep.
Um,
Nissan,
and
Volkswagen, Daimler, they're all there in different parts of the company, but and whilst conflict has been managed more successfully recently, some clients don't want to put up with it. And so that becomes a no-go situation and they'll eventually look to move.
so General Motors is going to have to coexist with Nissan under the same roof.
I guess so.
Um,
As long
uh,
as as long as they're promised, Chinese walls, whatever we want to call it, but that's not necessarily the case with all companies, Vivek. So,
and maybe car companies are not necessarily the best example because they're so large and they
yeah,
operate in so many different markets. But
yeah.
just imagine yourself. Let's talk about liquor, for example. And there's large multinational corporations at these companies. Diageo, I believe, is one of their clients. Um, so what if I'm a small, medium-sized liquor company in Mexico and I'm at one of these clients? Do you think that they are going to value me over what a potential global account is like Diageo? Or will I just kind of fall through the cracks?
Very good question.
And that dynamic is going to be repeated with every single smaller local client that is facing a situation where there is a competitor, but a much larger multinational competitor that poses a conflict. If the new mega agency is forced to choose between the big multinational or the small local client, they will always choose the multinational for obvious reasons. So, all you small, medium sized clients, you are going to face the brunt of conflict chaos. It's going to be with you. The big agencies will protect the big advertisers, but the small ones, there's no one looking out for you
Yeah.
actually there. That's it.
Conflict situations have softened in the past, Vivek. Again, as holding companies have numerous agencies that work within each other, that work separately. But there are, again, there are sometimes issues of, it's just too close for comfort. And there are a number of categories in which both these companies face to at least ask some questions or be able to answer some questions as it relates to chaos. We'll
Well,
go
I
to
think
one.
just if I can add something,
Yeah.
given the large levels of turnover in the industry, the talk of keeping businesses separate, it's getting harder to actually do it because one day you're working on one automotive brand and you leave the agency and you're working on another one. So, secrets are hard to keep when
Mm,
people are moving around
mm,
so much.
mm,
So the Chinese walls are not as strong as they used to
mm.
be, in my opinion.
I would agree. I would agree.
Yeah.
One final point that we wanted to get across, and that is, in this case, Omnicom is buying IPG. IPG as a holding company will disappear. A number of companies inside IPG will continue. I'm sure some may be reduced or sacrificed or bolted on to other companies, etc. The point here is people will forget that IPG existed in some time. The usually the second name doesn't usually survive as part of the conversations. I think that the big issue here, though, Vivek, and that is you're talking about cultures, you're talking about people with egos, you're talking about different ways of working, and bringing those two together is always a challenge. And so that's why also there's somewhat of a forced position of eliminating and not make it, you know, one one whole company. I remember when I started in this business, I worked at Saatchi and Saatchi Compton, and then that company bought Dancer Fitzgerald Sample, and then the name was Saatchi and Saatchi Compton DFS, and then DFS was removed, and then Compton was removed, and it was then Saatchi and Saatchi, and then it was bought by Publicis many years later, and it's still Saatchi and Saatchi, but it's a department in Publicis. So just a thought.
It,
That was my
you,
experience.
you bring up a really important point that we actually hadn't talked about, but as someone who worked at Burnett when Burnett had a very particular and strong culture,
Hmm.
and you're someone who worked at Gray when Gray had a very particular and strong culture. Those cultures are disappearing, and now,
Gone.
yeah, the name remains in some cases, not in all cases, but the culture's gone.
But it's gone.
So the point of difference of Burnett is largely gone.
Yeah.
And as you bring these cultures together, you kind of end up with it's neither this nor that. It's just sort of yeah, whatever. Just in a business like advertising, culture does matter.
It does. Very much so. Look, we wish good luck to these companies and their clients and hopefully things will work out. We're just saying there's a lot of things that can happen as this acquisition happens and goes on. And we just wanted to point them out. I'm sure, you will have read and seen many articles and points of views about what this acquisition really means. Hopefully, we've given you a few of our thoughts. And, smart clients will figure out what to do or to, double down and make sure that their business is served properly by the company that will continue. And some will change as well. So it'll be an interesting 2025. as it goes forwards in terms of talent, in terms of accounts, in terms of how these two companies are actually going to go forward and compete in the market. So we'll see.
I think the important message to advertisers is make sure you see through the spin. And protect yourselves the best you can. Make sure your business is not affected because chaos is coming. And if anyone says that not, it's going to be business as usual, don't trust them because it's not.
All right. This is the unspoken fallout from advertising mega mergers from me, Ricardo Ferraris, and from my business partner, Vivek Kuchibotla. Vivek, closing thoughts.
I was always a big Game of Thrones fan. And there's a phrase from Game of Thrones that just comes to mind. It's winter is coming.
Okay.
Tough times are coming. So be aware, prepare, make your best decisions, um, and you'll find your way through it. But don't just listen to the spin. That's all I can say.
All right. This was a special edition of our Think Catalyst podcast with breaking news. Thanks again for following us. Click on our website if you want to know more about what we do and how we can help you. We'd be delighted to have an initial conversation. Have a good one, Vivek.
You too. Take care.